Okay, so uh, frequently asked question, especially by a lot of our younger clients, young professionals who are now starting to include blockchain assets in their own portfolios financially, is how do we integrate those assets into our estate plans? It's an incredibly important issue that needs to be dealt with very um, carefully. Otherwise, could go wrong at a few different points along the way. What I want to cover in this quick video is just some of the most basic things that need to be done in order to incorporate those assets effectively into your estate plan. So let's start at the beginning and just discuss what the blockchain even is. So the blockchain is just a digital ledger of transactions. And those transactions are represented by just packets of data, just ones and zeros that represent that people agreed to trade something from one party to another party. That's it. Now, that digital ledger doesn't exist anywhere, it's not on paper, and neither are the transactions, but it's duplicated many times over in multiple parts of the globe. And all of those ledgers need to be in agreement to verify that the transaction happened. That's the proof. That's the trust that the packet of data has any value. Now, its duplication is what makes it an incredibly secure transaction. It's really hard to hack, really hard to cheat. The larger the blockchain grows, the more transactions that happen, and the more that it gets duplicated, the less likely it is ever to be hacked or cheated somehow. So it's an incredibly secure way to track transactions. That doesn't necessarily make it inherently valuable, but it does make it secure. Some of the more common blockchain assets people have right now are different kinds of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum or Stellar Lumens. There might be others like NFTs or non-fungible tokens, really fascinating blockchain asset there. Secured currencies and utility tokens. There's a lot of things out there that might be considered blockchain assets, but they all need to be planned and integrated very carefully and deliberately. So what makes them so special or unique or even troubling in an estate planning scenario is that, well, first of all, they're not tangible assets. They're not something you could just pick up and hold and give to another person like a $1 bill. It's not a thing that exists that you can pass from, parent to child. It's also not the kind of thing you could just put into a regular bank account. You couldn't go down to your checking or savings account and deposit your Bitcoin at the bank. So it gets held in a very different way depending on the kind of asset you have. It might be in a wallet. And your access to it is controlled by a personal key or passcode. It's very secure. It's unique to you, 64 digits or more. And it's the kind of thing that you need to keep very, very secure in order to make sure that you can hold on to that asset, or that your beneficiaries can hold on to it if you become incapacitated or pass away. There are some estimates by experts right now that between 23 and 30 million individual Bitcoins have been lost since being purchased. And that represents, I think, in current value, upwards of $1.5 trillion in value. I mean, it's a huge amount of lost money we're talking about simply because those keys were not kept securely and passed on in the right way. So can you integrate your blockchain assets, your Bitcoin, into your trust? Revocable trust, irrevocable trust, asset protection trust. Absolutely, we can do that. That's not the difficult part. Once you get them into your trust, it's not necessarily going to be so easy for your trustees or your agents or executors to access those things unless you really effectively and securely pass along your personal key information. And even if they have that, knowing what to do with those assets is incredibly important. So there needs to be clarity about how the digital assets, and in particular the blockchain assets, need to be managed for the sake of your beneficiaries. So some things to do, very basic. Number one, make sure whatever legal documents you have, power of attorney, will, trust, has provisions for digital assets, making sure that your fiduciaries can access those things and control them once they have them. Number two, be sure that your agents, executors, trustees have access to your personal key. So the documents need to specify that kind of authority, but then they also need to have access to the key itself to be able to manage those things effectively or at all. And then clarity in the document about how they should be administered. There are some important tax questions that need to be answered about how the capital gains from blockchain assets need to be, whether or not to be treated as a regular income for your beneficiaries or as a capital gain or something else. There needs to be clarity about what's called the prudent investor rule. Does your trust give your trustee permission to keep managing these assets that some might think it's not so prudent to hold? And then do you want them to be sold, liquidated, and transferred to your beneficiaries as cash or other assets, or do you want them to be held long term or for some period of time as blockchain assets? These are kind of things that you need to give people clarity about. And if you approach the estate plan as if it's just who gets my stuff when I die, and you think about dividing things out by percentage, but don't specifically deal with these important classes of assets, then things could get weird real quick for your people. So if you have any questions about this kind of planning, don't hesitate to give us a call, or to speak to your own attorney, CPA, financial advisor about how to make sure these things get integrated effectively. But it's incredibly important that you do.